books. We're almost on week 2 already. Thursday Night Football happening tomorrow. But let's take stock, address what we just saw in week 1 of the 2024 NFL season. From a Dynasty fantasy football perspective, how do we make sense of this? I want to shed some context, some perspective, really key in on the top upper echelon performers that really didn't play maybe to expectations. A not so great week 1 from a fantasy perspective. So let's hone in on, first and foremost, not the receivers, the quarterbacks. Josh Allen, Mahomes, Stroud, Lamar, Hurts. All right. No alarms to really sound there. Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams. Okay. Caleb Williams sitting there, QB7. So already a little bit of movement from that QB6 designation. We see how the Bears come out there in week 1 against the Titans. It doesn't look great. The defense, special teams really carries them, make some plays down the stretch. But keeping in mind, this is a rookie quarterback. And a reasonable analysis of this, in my view, is it's the first NFL in-game action. You need to hold these players, or rather, allow a little bit of slack for rookies. And if not, even on the rookie angle of things, let's just go back to 2023, week 1. Let's go back to 2023, week 1, to give some more context. Just for, regardless of rookies, anybody in general from a fantasy sense, why you should not hold tight to week 1 strictly when we have, at the end of the day, 15 more weeks. Much more larger of a sample size for these players. And in Dynasty, as much as I want to be proactive and anticipate, I do not want to base strictly 1 week forming most of my analysis, most of the rationale for making a decision, making a very meaningful, potentially team-altering, roster contention, rebuild, altering trade. Let's look at, courtesy of, fantasydata.com. Let's go to the 2023 regular season, week 1 quarterbacks. Some filter in there. Just bear with me. And as always, guys, as I'm going through here, drop your questions, your discussions in the comments, live here. Drop them after the fact. Get the perspective. Get the questions flowing. We're building a community here. I want to address and help you guys out. 2023 regular season quarterbacks. Looking at week 1, last year, Tua, nice performance there. Mac Jones, I think you've already seen this Mac Jones get thrown out there quite often as the guy to really not overreact. So week 1, that's what I see going around on Twitter, on the X sphere, so to speak. Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, Kirk Cousins, Baker, and Sam Howell. That composed your QB1s. For 2023. Week 1. Week 1 only. If we go to, on the other hand, 2023, the entirety of the regular season, just looking at the per game averages, juxtaposing Tua, Mac Jones, Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Justin Herbert. How much carryover is there in that top 5 from week 1 to when it's all said and done in 2023? Well, There is none. If you want to take Joe Flacco out, that bumps Jordan Love up there. But from a per game average, I think that's just more indicative rather than taking the total straight accrual of fantasy points, which lends itself to the guys that obviously play full 15, 16, 17 game seasons. If you only based it off of week 1 in 2023, your Tua's, your Mac Jones of the world, and you panicked about a Patrick Mahomes in 7th. You look at the guys that finished 1, 2, 3. Allen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Where were they? You got to scroll all the way down to, 19th. Jalen Hurts was against the Patriots week 1 of last year. You got to go down to 24th for Josh Allen against the Jets on that Monday Night Football exactly about a year ago. Lamar Jackson all the way down 27th. Not even eclipsing 7 fantasy points. That is some insane juxtaposition, let's just say. From 1 week, the first week, to how things actually look as the season develops, as things play out, and you get a clearer picture of what reality is for this season. I'm not going to say there's the exact same amount of crossover from the players that, week 1, 2023, that we should just assume the exact same amount is going to be the carryover or not carryover to the top 12 when the season's all said and done at the quarterback position in particular. You just have to have some diamond hands to a degree. In Dynasty, you cannot overreact. Really, you shouldn't reactive in the sense of, oh no, panic, the sky's falling. Respond to things. Think critically, rationally, reasonably, just sensibly. So Caleb Williams, I do not expect things to be that difficult for him, rough sailing, moving forward. I think mostly people in Dynasty, given only a little bit of a drop, obviously disappointing 1 week, but QB7, I see him staying here, only going up, really. We go down to Joe Burrow. Thumbnail of this video. Joe Burrow, QB10. You see he's trending a little bit down. Here. You see really the upset of the week. The upset of week 1, the Patriots going in and defeating the Cincinnati Bengals. They're in Cincinnati. What can happen in week 1? We can have surprises. What can happen in week 1? Well, for everybody, it's the first in-game action that they've had for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. For all preseason, for all training camp, you can't simulate that. And you especially can't, with a good conscience, prepare and predict for what exactly you might see with a new team, a new opponent in the sense of a completely new leadership, new coaching staff, new players. So much can happen in week 1. So much cannot happen, really not take place in preseason. And building that routine, that rapport, just fine-tuning things when you have, here we go. Sorry for that. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 of Joe Burrow, not participating fully, being on a bit of a pitch count in week 1. You don't have your offensive coordinator there anymore. So is that glass half full, glass half empty, with a new coaching staff, with the coordinator and Brian Callahan not being there with Joe Burrow, I'm ultimately giving the benefit of the doubt to the talent that I believe will prevail with Joe Burrow. The connection with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins being out as well doesn't help things. And it looks like he's still not fully practicing, which is a little bit of disappointment. But fingers crossed, should be back relatively soon. And Jamar Chase should be playing, practicing at least, preparing more than he had in the months, the weeks leading up to the season. You just can't panic to week one. Results. Joe Burrow in particular. As shocking as it was, as disappointing as it was for the team, and as much as we equate, in some sense, team success to individual dynasty player evaluation, as much as a shock as it is, with Gerard Mayo, Jacoby Brissett going in there, beating the Bengals, let the cooler side of you prevail. Joe Cool, right? All right. Justin Herbert and the Chargers go in. Well, they stay in LA. It's not really a home field advantage, though. Given you have the Raiders, you have really any opposing fan base making noise, making it really their own home game in a way. But with Justin Herbert, he is under a new coaching staff. He's got a whole new suite of weapons. It's week one. You get a win against a really tough team in the Raiders, led by Antonio Pierce. And the game script itself lends yourself to not really from a pure quantity perspective. Bye, Theo. Yep. Justin Herbert, I mean, he's very much a buy for me. If there's a player that is the antithesis of a sell, it's Justin Herbert here at quarterback. So as much as it's not ideal to see in week one Gardner Minshew outthrow you by 257 minus 144 by over 100 yards. It's clean football by Justin Herbert, 17 to 26. Yes, the average, it's not the most explosive. Got a healthy dose of J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. We're talking about the game script itself for me. The Chargers being in the position that they were against the team in Vegas and the Raiders. It just wasn't going to lend itself to a banner week by Justin Herbert. By no means is it a reflection of Justin Herbert's talent. I know, look, everybody's a function of their situation, right? Everybody's a function of their situation and the relative circumstance. What if I told you, and does this only exacerbate your concern? I don't think it should. But what if I told you the Chargers, this Jim Harbaugh, this Greg Roman-led team, was not even amongst the top rushing rate teams in week one? Was not even in the top, not even in the top 10 highest rushing rates in the NFL. Sub 50% for the Chargers. 53 to 46, favoring passing the ball. Look at the teams. I think this is some nice context looking at week one. The Saints ran it 58% of the time. We know the Steelers, they're going to run the ball. We know with Arthur Smith, if anything's true. The Patriots, that makes sense. The 49ers, the highest rushing rate of any team last year for the entirety of the season. So if anything, do team identities, will they shift or will they stay the same? I think that's interesting context. I think the 49ers, we certainly know what they are. For all these teams, I think identity, you do work on that. There's something to be said about that. You do work on your identity in those 9 months. Maybe subtract a month or two, 6, 7, 8 months leading up between last season's end, leading up to this year. So you do form identities, construct identities for the most part. I don't really expect all that much of a shakeup in the true pass to run rates, in the play calling identities, we'll just call it that. But the overall opportunities, you got to keep in mind in the modern NFL, what is a good amount of snaps? Fantasy favorable, we're talking reasonable 60, high 60s, 70s. The Chargers, in terms of raw snap counts, it was only 57. Only 57 snaps on offense. That is absolutely going to be on the lower end for the season. Justin Herbert has a clean game. Your new guy, Lad McConkey, he connects with him for a touchdown. You get some help from, who would have guessed, J.K. Dobbins. I am extremely, extremely bullish on the Chargers as a whole, on Justin Herbert in particular. I'm not getting lost in the relatively paltry 10-ish fantasy points from Justin Herbert in week 1. Just not overreacting to it. There should be no panic. There should be no reason why he's really looked at as this 3rd round pick valuation in Dynasty, Superflex, startup, overall rankings. Just don't get it. Don't get it. That's what I really want to focus on in terms of the quarterbacks, your QB1, so to speak, who didn't have great performances in week 1. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's shift gears over to the wide receiver position. CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb did not have an incredible week 1. Incredible week 1. He just got paid, right? He just got paid though. So that's, from a dynasty perspective, that's nice that he's really been cemented there for years to come as the guy. I think we all saw this coming. Jerry Jones was never going to let an offensive weapon like CeeDee Lamb just go right through the door. I think it's interesting though, maybe we didn't expect Dak Prescott to get that contract as soon as he did though. Right, a deadline of the regular season contract in Dak Prescott. But I think, if anything, you got to be encouraged. You got to be excited that Dak gets extended, because think of him, what you will, as a playoff when it all matters, big games, whatever, this or that, the other. In a fantasy perspective, in the regular season, strictly the regular season context, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, a long-term dynasty fantasy contextual marriage. It bodes extremely well for CeeDee Lamb. Extremely well for CeeDee Lamb. That even after a 3 for 25, so 2.5 points on the ground, you factor in 5 for 61, the 10 targets though, double-digit targets, nothing has really changed there. It was not a great week by his standards. Let's actually look at, speaking of standards, why not look at what CeeDee Lamb did last year in week 1? Looking at it year over year. Going to receiver. I think you're going to be a little bit surprised. Unless you have the greatest memory, photographic fantasy memory. Kudos to you, shout out to you. those of us that need our mind, our memory jogged a little bit, let's look at, of course, we know CeeDee Lamb was number one at the receiver position in 2023 when it was all said and done. What was he in regular season 2023 week one? What was he then? We see Tyreek, Ayuk, Jacoby Myers, Diggs, Bourne, Ridley, Jefferson. Not really seen in the top 12. Funny enough, we see a guy like Rashid Shaheed, was a wide receiver 1 in 2023. All the way down, all the way down. Let me know when. CeeDee Lamb was wide receiver 33 in week 1 of 2023. Scoring not even 12 fantasy points for you in PPR formats. CeeDee Lamb, especially at the receiver position, when game scripts, you don't know how they're exactly going to go, especially in the case where the Cowboys dominated the Browns. Just absolutely dominated. CeeDee Lamb, everything's all good. And speaking of which, Theo, shout out, asking in the chat, CD or 2 mid-late firsts 2025. Of course, that's where we're at. Given 2024, we're over. It's crazy. We were just thinking of 2024 rookie drafts a few short months ago. But CD or 2 mid-late 2025 firsts and, oh my gosh, it's getting cut off for me. And a 25-6. This is YouTube chat. The heart button just blocking that. So 2 mid-late 25 firsts and 2. Theo, let me know what is that 25 firsts. And then let me pull it up. Let me pull it up a second. The 2 25 firsts. And then 2 mid-late firsts. CD or 2 25 mid-late firsts and 2. So 4 firsts or just 2? If it's CD versus 2 2025 mid to late firsts in a 12-by-11, I gotta go with CeeDee Lamb still. I gotta go with CeeDee Lamb. I gotta go with the hammer. That hammer. Shout out Trades and 5. 4 for, oh, so you're saying 4 firsts. You are saying 4 firsts. Okay. 4 firsts for anybody in a 12-by-11 Superflex. Really anybody not named Josh Allen for me. I think you gotta take the 4 firsts. If this is where context is king, context matters, right? If you have a good idea of what those firsts, if they're properly valued outside of this trade, consistently, we'll say that. But 225, 2 in 2026. So that is a lot of power. That's a lot of power. So I would say absolutely you take those 4 firsts, assuming, and you know what happens when you assume, right? That's why context, context, of course, is king. If people value them at a similar exchange rate, we'll say, in this trade, yes, because then what can you get? What should you be able to get with 3 of those firsts even? With 3 of those firsts, maybe it doesn't even take you 3. Maybe it takes 2 and then a second in there. I think you can maybe get, it's crazy to say, but a Jamar Chase. Maybe even, well, this is actually a perfect segue. Capture on week 1 overreaction, if you can, at the receiver position for Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is wide receiver 3 still. Hasn't really changed of recent. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sunday Night Football. We see a Jameson Williams breakout. And it's interesting, following the discourse in this offseason, talked about Jameson Williams. His name came up occasionally, once or twice. And everybody, look, we hadn't seen it. We hadn't seen really anything given the uniqueness of his injury and then the suspension. But there was always, to a degree, a developing narrative, the Dan Campbell himself speaking to it. Hey, he's putting in the work. He's getting better. Even Brad Holmes as well, the GM. And so where do we land now in week one? We land in week one with Jameson Williams getting way more fantasy points than anyone could have expected, to the tune of 5 for 121 and a touchdown receiving. Also added you some rushing upside there as well. 9 targets. So he led the team in targets, Jameson Williams did, over Sam Laporta, over Jahmyr Gibbs, over Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that's pretty insane. Don't think many saw that coming with Jameson Williams, especially seeing, I don't think anyone saw Amon-Ra St. Brown being 4th in receiving yards. What can we take from week one? What's an important lesson, I think, to learn in week one? Teams prepare very, very precisely to stop certain players, to match up against certain players in specific ways. And so there wasn't this assumption, at least I don't believe, on the Rams side of, well, Jameson Williams is this guy that's going to just break out, fly by us. Amon-Ra St. Brown is where we're devoting a lot of our attention. Got to stop him. Got to stop, of course, Sam Laporta in the pass game. Then we've got Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery to worry about. The Lions, what are they? They're just one of the best teams in the league. They're one of the best teams in the league. And teams are going to have to prepare in a variety of ways. Sometimes Amon-Ra, Laporta, Gibbs, any of these really holy trinity of fantasy, of dynasty assets in this Lions offense, they're going to be susceptible to not great weeks. And look, Jameson Williams, him announcing himself, him having this much of a, commanding this much of a role, does it take away? Yes, in this game it did clearly take away from some other players. But now, defenses are going to have to account for that speed with Jameson Williams. Now you might have to really play and account for, well, a safety deep, shaded wherever Jameson Williams is going around the formation. Just keep an eye on him. A second guy deep, cheating a little bit. So what can that potentially do? Pave the middle of the field, the short intermediate parts of the field, a little more room, all the merrier for Amon-Ra St. Brown moving forward. I think that's very reasonable. That's where the expectation is for me. Not panicking over Amon-Ra's week one dud. Just not. I simply am not. Going back to receivers, Justin Jefferson, look, nice game. Sam Darnold looking like he's going to be able to support that offense in a potentially meaningful way, although it was against the Giants. So the Giants, man, I don't know. I mean, I'm an Eagles fan. It just looks bad. I guess it's what most people saw coming. I'm not saying it's completely over. Speaking of a guy, I know we already covered quarterback. Daniel Jones, man, I'm higher than most, I think, on Daniel Jones at this point, but well, something's got to change. Something's got to change quick. I'll just leave it at that. But Jamar Chase, really already talked about him hand in hand in a lot of ways with Joe Burrow in that discussion a little bit earlier. Jamar Chase, don't panic. Do not panic. If anything, with the T. Higgins injury that's sort of lingering, that's going on, or potentially an absence this week, maybe even next, it's only going to be more opportunity for Jamar Chase. We know of the long-standing connection. But a rust week one, very reasonable to expect. Even with the long-standing connection going back to LSU, I'm not panicking. Not panicking with Jamar Chase. I think he gets a contract extension in season. I do believe that. I just can't see, even though it's really weird with the couple years remaining, really looking for it soon thereafter in the same really year as Justin Jefferson, when we're talking about different draft years. I think that's interesting. With Jamar Chase, the Marvin Harrison, though, it did not go as expected. I think everybody can say that. Even as a guy who hasn't quite valued Marv quite to the degree as his going rate was in the late first of startup drafts, early second, did not expect this. Did not expect him to only have a single catch. A single catch. 4, 3, 4. Where are we to be? 4 yards, yes. You got to scroll all the way down. Did have 3 targets, though. And there was, of course, that missed connection, end of the game. Kyler Murray not seeing him on the opposite side of the field he decided to throw it to. With Marv, you shouldn't be panicking, even though he looks slow, even though he did not come close to the expectations of a generational prospect debut, the son of a Hall of Fame player at the position. It's going to be in flux relatively with this Cardinals offense. With Kyler Murray, Drew Petzing as the OC. This receiver room, it's clearly Marv. Greg Dortch, we see him. He's going to have, I think, a steady role, looking at 8 targets for him. And then Trey McBride, led the team in targets there with 9. He's, of course, an extremely highly thought of tight end for good reason. It's a rookie. You got to develop chemistry. You're not going to know, really cross any bridge of significance, of something tangible, meaningful, till week 1. And it wasn't great. It was in Buffalo, a hostile environment on the road. A little bit of a benefit of the doubt there for me with Marv. It really can only go up from here. I think as a really glass half full look at it, it can only go up from here. It can only go up from here. We're talking about the 4th overall pick. Of course, there's no NFL draft scoring category, but it at least gets at how highly the Cardinals view him as their alpha number 1 guy. This is just crazy. Compared to expectations for week 1, you gotta have some patience. You gotta have some patience. And I said, even my last video, he's not, regardless of what happens with Marv, he's not going to be traded. At least if you have him, you're certainly not going to cut your losses right now. That makes 0 sense to me after this performance. You want things to get better. Things will get better. Things will get better. Down the board a bit here. Malik Neighbors. It's looking like, speaking of New York receivers, you see Mr. Garrett Wilson a little bit ahead of him here in the wide receiver landscape of wide receiver 1s. With Malik Neighbors, The trajectory looks so similar to Garrett Wilson in his rookie year. The quarterback play, certainly not going to be amongst the best, high end. But if you still somehow get to around that 1,000-yard marker, you're going to have, by virtue of the player and the underlying talent, the nightmare he poses for any defensive back, really the separation, the speed, things are getting better with Malik Neighbors. Things are going to get better. The same logic of rookie, welcome to the league, welcome to week one, your first NFL regular season action when it actually starts to matter. Malik Neighbors, maybe see if you can buy now. Certainly, I am not trading him at all. At all right now. We go over, just look at the actual target distribution. Visit the box score. 28-6. 28-6, so not great, not great, not great, not great. Already alluded to that. 42 attempts for Daniel Jones. 7 targets for Malik Neighbors. Rondell Robinson, 12. So that's pretty nice for him in his own right. But Malik gets 7, catches 5 of them, 66 yards. He's an extreme big play threat. We saw the build-up in the preseason. And I know it's not, of course, the regular season. It's completely different. That's really a tenet of the message, of my messaging for these players. But the point being, it was no joke. The talent, the clear evidence, Malik Neighbors dominating against NFL competition. It didn't quite produce gaudy fantasy numbers week one, but I am very much looking forward to Malik Neighbors. Steady rise here, 66 yards, 5+ catches, relative floor. Of course, going to be times where it goes maybe slightly below, but you do the math. Over the course of a season, 15 games, we're right there at that 1,000-yard marker, right there at this pace. So then we're going to look at, Malik Neighbors, of course, firmly a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. And if it's on this track where Malik Neighbors, in this New York wide receiver one experience as a rookie, you then get your quarterback in some way or another, likely through the draft. Maybe it's through a trade or through free agency somehow. Then it's only going to spell a lot better for Malik Neighbors. Don't trade him. Don't trade him right now. Do not trade him, please. Please, please, please. Rounding out the wide receiver ones in Dynasty and their performances that weren't great. All right, Puka. Messaging is clear enough. I mean, the guy was a historic producer as a rookie. He was targeted at an extremely high rate in week one when he was healthy in this when he played most of the first half. Puka, just let things play out. Let time. What's the only certainty? Time elapsing, right? Time is going to elapse. He is going to get healthier. Yes, going on the IR, that really sucks. 4 weeks. The only way I'm really looking to trade a Puka Nacua, or in theory, it can apply to any of these players, is if you get fair, if anything more than fair valuation. And for me, what is that actually for Puka Nacua? It's not wide receiver 10. It's not wide receiver 10 in Dynasty. It's much closer to wide receiver 5 for me. It's wide receiver 5. That's effectively where I have ranked him heading into the season, and it doesn't just get thrown out the window because of a injury in week one. It doesn't. It just does not. It doesn't. Cooper Kupp. Look, a nice, healthy Cooper Kupp isn't strictly negative for Puka Nacua. It only makes defenses have to actually devote as much, if anything more, than what they had thought in terms of attention than they previously would have. We know McVay is going to throw the ball around. We know Stafford can support these two players. Puka Nacua, if anything, look to buy him. If anything, I'm looking to buy. Nico Collins. Nico Collins here. Wide receiver 11. Well, he once again went out there with CJ Stroud. He effectively showed that he is, if anyone's the wide receiver one there, he is the wide receiver one in Houston. And connected to CJ Stroud, clearly an MVP caliber quarterback, demonstrated that in his rookie year. It's a phenomenal situation. Phenomenal situation. And he gets the contract extension, Nico Collins does. It is a phenomenal situation here in Houston. He leads the team in targets with 8. Tank Dell, 7. Stephon Diggs, 6. And I think it's interesting. The air yards, it's very similar, over 100 apiece for Nico and Tank Dell, and it was not even close to that for Stephon Diggs. So with Nico Collins, the message being, if you can trade him for top 10, this is kind of on the flip side, a promising performance. If you can trade him for wide receiver 10 or better in Dynasty pricing, I would be interested. I'd be interested. But, didn't know be here this late. Well, look, Dynasty calls. Dynasty fantasy football calls. We never sleep, right? Got to give the people perspective. Got to give some perspective. If nothing else. Nico Collins, I think it's wide receiver 11. It's justifiable. It's justifiable. If you can even get a little bit richer, capture on momentum, general feeling with the Texans, I don't think it's just a terrible time to sell. Jalen Waddle rounding out. The receiver ones, wide receiver 12. I'm interested in selling because I don't think Tyreek Hill is going anywhere in the next year or two. I don't. And I think for Jalen Waddle, this is his relative ceiling. I think right there in terms of the wide receiver 1 conversation, with some injuries, of course, namely to Roma Dunze, some lackluster performances by Mr. Ayuk, Drake London, Olave. This is an interesting range here, 15, 16, 17. So this is where Jalen Waddle finds himself by virtue of a multitude of factors, right? Relative versus zone. Let's just recap what actually happened in that Dolphins game against Jacksonville week 1 here. So we have 12 targets for Tyreek Hill. 12. 5 for Jalen Waddle. Gets all 5, and he gets over 100 yards. So look, his moniker, he's a big play threat, right? We know Mike McDaniel has a type. He does. He absolutely does. And Jalen Waddle is going to be a guy where, look, that 21.8 average per catch, he's a guy where I think you can reasonably expect that neighborhood. Unlike, I feel like, looking at just last year, a Brandon Ayuk, a George Pickens. I think given the skill set of Jalen Waddle, it's reasonable. And given the just potency of the Dolphins team in general, it's reasonable to expect this degree of big play incredibly high per catch averages. So, looking to potentially trade Jalen Waddle if I can get commensurate value with this wide receiver one valuation. So what does that look like? Well, using 12-11, he's definitely a multiple firsts guy I'm looking to recoup. And especially look with this 2025 class, I mean it always psychologically gets trends this way. The class looks better than it did. We get to actually associate players with performances on the college level, that is. And as we are in the NFL. After 1 week, though, we're associating players with performances. Jalen Waddle, an early 25 first and a mid 2025 first. That's a bit of a target price, I think, in terms of what I would like to sell Jalen Waddle for right now in Dynasty. And I think you're certainly capable of getting that price. I think with how many people feel about just the Dolphins' aesthetically pleasing team, the idea of a quick receiver, I think it's a decent time. I think it's a decent time to sell a Jalen Waddle. All right. Let's pivot a little bit to running back. Let's pivot a bit to running back. Bijan. Not a great showing for that entire Falcons team. Not a great showing, but I think about ultimately what happened there. You're going up against a Steelers team that, if I'm going to bet on anyone to actually show up, or in terms of just players, well coached, executing on a defensive end of things, specifically defensive end. I mean, you have a TJ Watt coming off the edge. It's a nightmare for anybody. And this is a new staff for the Falcons. It's the same faces, more or less, on that Steelers defense. They're one of the better defenses in the league. They wreaked havoc on Kirk Cousins. And his numbers, let's pull them up. They did not look good whatsoever. So for Bijan Robinson to go out there and still actually do okay, I think it's only promising for his ability to retain the Dynasty running back one label he had coming into this year. So let's assess exactly some of the raw numbers here. 16 for 26 for Kirk Cousins. I mean, he averaged 6 per. More interceptions than touchdowns. Not ideal. Bijan, though, he gets 18 carries. Bijan does. He gets targeted 5 times. Catches all 5 for 40 yards. I think that's effectively the receiving upside, a floor of sorts that he poses each and every week in, week out. We're talking approaching 25, effectively involving opportunities, touches, whatever you want to describe it. Upwards of 25 plus, 24 plus times. You can't really beat that opportunity. You can't. And what's another way to look at this, which I think Bijan Robinson, it only spells extremely well in terms of the early returns, which I don't think is a fluke. I think you follow Coach Beak Index, you follow just not noise, if it is repeatedly being hammered home by the coaching staff, the desire to get him involved, and you see, well, what do you see? Allow me to just toggle up here. What do you see? Bijan Robinson on the field for 50 of the 56 snaps for the Atlanta Falcons. 89%, approaching 90%. That's an incredible involvement in the offense. At least, if you're on the field, what does it mean? You're in potential position. You're in position to score fantasy points. Bijan, it's just going to be there. It's going to be there. And I think, look, even if the Falcons struggle like they did against the Steelers here. There's just so many with the running back position. As much as we don't like it, the Falcons, whether they're struggling like they did week one, or they get off to really good starts, really nice leads in future weeks. There's so many game script potentials for Bijan Robinson. It's a fixed role. It's a fixed role. It's not an incredibly sure. It's a variable in the sense that game to game things will change. Exact receiving usage, exact amount of carries, subject to change. But that overall amount of touches, amount of involvement in the offense, and the opportunities therein, it bodes extremely well for Bijan Robinson. It really does, regardless of the team's success. So I think in talking about zero RB days, that's all you can reasonably ask for, I believe, in this modern era. So Bijan, Brees. Look, the Jets, you play one of the best, if not the best team in the NFL. You're not going to play him again, at least in the regular season. So Brees Hall goes out there, again, in his team's losing effort, has an okay game in terms of fantasy points. Jahmyr Gibbs alluded to it by virtue of really the aforementioned Detroit centerpiece of Amon-Ra St. Brown. A similar degree of logic applies to Jahmyr Gibbs, in my opinion. Look, Jameson Williams ended up being the guy in terms of the passing game, how things worked out on Sunday Night Football there in Detroit against the Rams. And what happens in terms of a running game? Look, you rely on the bell cowier, the larger, well-built, the grinded-out guy when you need it, when you want to just burn and churn clock. It's Dave Montgomery. It just did not really lend itself to a Jahmyr Gibbs incredible involvement. So many targets, so many attempts. It just didn't work out. It just didn't work out for Jahmyr Gibbs this game. But it's not what I expect. It's not what I expect moving forward. I think it's very interesting. We look at just how the year started last season for Jahmyr Gibbs. Not as well, nearly as well as we had hoped. I remember there were some calls to just trade Jahmyr Gibbs after not just week one, after a couple weeks. So there was a little bit of some returns or lack thereof. With Bijan, Reese, Jahmyr Gibbs, just don't panic. Please don't panic. These guys are in unique situations on their rookie deal, have incredible skill sets, can do everything effectively, at least fantasy relevancy as a runner, as a receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm not panicking. I'm just not panicking. Not selling him after 1 week, after this week one. CMC, I think given he's a running back, I know he's got unique, really one-of-one production lately. I don't think people are really going to pay that to you right now for a 28-year-old running back, even though it is a CMC. Given the injury, you just got to, if you have him, don't trade him at a discount right now, because we know if there's almost any guarantee, it seems like it's going to be CMC's involvement in an NFL offense and the Kyle Shanahan 49ers just being a machine offensively. So I'm not looking to trade Christian McCaffrey. Point blank period. Devon Achane. I see him rising back up here. See a lot of hysteria seemingly in the offseason about, oh no, Devon Achane, they draft Jalen Wright. Gets injured. And look, he's on the injury report again after just 1 week. But what do we get reminded? With Devon Achane in particular? With the Dolphins offense, look, talked about it. Well, already broaching the subject with the Jalen Waddle. It's the most explosive offense in the NFL. It's the most explosive offense in the NFL. So Devon Achane, well, he only gets you 10. I say only. He clearly had the most. He got the most carries, almost 2 to 1 of anybody else. Where he most right there, 6 for 9, only 2.4 per, but he gets you a touchdown on the ground. He gets you insane, really awesome receiving usage upside there, almost 15 points as a receiver. I mean, that's really the type of skill set he provides and the upside he provides you. Really the number 3, although he was really the number 2 in this game from a receiver skill set. Devon Achane, if you can sell him for approaching Christian McCaffrey, maybe approaching even, Jahmyr Gibbs, approaching top-tier level running back prices. Approaching top-tier level running back prices, I would be absolutely all for selling a Devon Achane, given, look, the injuries, I think they're going to be an issue, and there's going to be some volatility there for sure. But best ball especially, look, I'm not... He is a prime best ball piece to have, but look, most leagues are still lineup leagues. That's still me at a core here. Devon Achane, really nice week 1, a reminder of the absolute explosion of a player, of a fantasy output he can provide you. Well, frankly, it's pretty meaningfully less usage involvement as well guys above him, like a Bijan or a Brees or Jahmyr Gibbs or CMC. So, JT, the Colts talk about highlight plays. I mean, Anthony Richardson, some of those throws. I mean, he's really one of one. I know it's throw the word freak out there, generational athlete. I mean, he really is. Anthony Richardson is, and I think Shane Steichen, he's the coach, one of the coaches I want to be connected to from a player, as well as a dynasty owner, manager, decision maker. JT, I'm not really looking to sell. 16 for 48, only a 3.0 flat average. Gets you the touchdown, though. Doesn't have any really receiving involvement. No running back does, for that matter. Week 1 for the Colts. You see Alec Pierce, he had a nice game. I mean, really encapsulating the big play. Average of 41.7. Then even Ashton Dulin had a lot of Ashton Dulin had really his about a half, if not more, honestly, 60% of which after the catch on that one reception for a touchdown. Pittman, not looking great. If it's this really big play, just bomb it down the field, aerial attack, air raid, so to speak. So the quantity for Michael Pittman, if it's this boom or bust, might not be great for him. But speaking of JT, this isn't a game where I think people are moved to really go out of their way to buy him. I'm not going out of my way to sell Jonathan Taylor. I'm not. After week 1, look, it's him. It's him and Anthony Richardson for that running game. It's really nobody else. Well, let's look at it. Let's look at the exact snap counts for Jonathan Taylor. I can learn how to read. 96% of the snaps. Come on. The opportunities are only going to continue to come. Pause. Jonathan Taylor, he's in a great situation. Wasn't a great output week 1, but there are going to be multiple great outputs ahead of you. Don't sell him. Do not sell Jonathan Taylor. Please. Saquon. Seen him RB7 here. Look, I don't know how replicable a 3-touchdown performance is going to be. I just don't. But we can trace back some of my thoughts documented here on TikTok. Follow on TikTok if you haven't already. Going to be posting a lot more content now that we're really into the thick of things here. Regular season speaking. Well, as well as here on YouTube, given we're live. But Dobbins is Timothy. J.K. Dobbins. Not the Chargers. I mean, look, he looks like he's the clear RB1 through week 1. But Saquon Barkley, talk about a guy who had an injury in his own right. Around, I'm thinking of the time of their careers, maybe not crazy different, all that different, I feel like, in terms of the age of their respective injuries, major injuries. But it's taken Dobbins a while, but Saquon, he's really an incredible athlete. Unmatched athleticism of note, of recent memory. And look, with the Eagles, it's gonna be a potent offense with Kellen Moore now as the OC. As an Eagles fan, I mean, I've been saying, look, they're gonna ride Saquon Barkley repeatedly, game after game after game. Pause again. Saquon Barkley, he is the clear RB1. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. It was a nice game script against a good team in the Packers. Back and forth. Saquon Barkley at RB7. I'm not really looking to sell. I think he's got helium for me to go up right bordering Christian McCaffrey. Going up to RB5, to be clear. And that's frankly about a round effectively in value. Pretty significant, meaningful in the overall ranking. Any position, speaking. But Saquon, we're not really looking to sell. Not looking to sell. Tyron at RB8. Look, I've been saying it clear as day. Kyren Williams, I mean, he's RB1. He was not under real threat just because of Blake Corum got picked. Although I did think with the pick, Blake Corum was selected. I thought it was a threat, but considering Blake Corum's skill set and him being drafted where he was, I don't think he poses really any more of a dynamism than Kyren Williams, and he poses a specific skill set that, sure, warrants him getting picked highly in the NFL draft, but not a true threat to Kyren Williams. Not a true threat to Kyren Williams. We see, frankly, Ronnie Rivers get the nod. Very, very, very isolated, albeit. The punt returner, Kyren Williams, oh no, doesn't meaningfully change things all that much. All that much. When ultimately we see, let's refresh ourselves here. 91%. 91% there for Kyren Williams. 91%. Really can't beat that. Really can't. And with the Rams, look, especially now, Puka's out for 4 games at least. I think it's Kyren and Kupp. Heavily relied upon. So, Ken Walker, RB9. I think this is about sort of fair value. Ken Walker greater than Kyren and A-Chain in Dynasty. Shout out the roll. Do you hate that take? I mean, I hate's a strong word. Definitely do not like the take. Definitely do not like the Ken Walker over Kyren and over A-Chain. I just don't think Ken Walker is really as explosive of a player, offers as much receiving upside. But look, in terms of the bell cow, throw that word out there, bell cow, he's absolutely capable of being a modern workhorse, amassing a lot of carries. Ken Walker, it was a good week, right? It was a good week for Ken Walker. Let's pull it up. And especially with Ben Grubb there with Seattle, things could very well be in flux. We don't exactly know how things are going to consistently look after week 1. But I really want to pull up because this full disclosure, Seahawks Broncos. Of course, it was on Red Zone watching it, toggling on Sunday Ticket. But look, 20 for 103. Look, he's clearly he's got the carry upside. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely does. He gets you 3 targets, catches 2 for 6 yards. So the receiving upside, it just really is not there relatively. Isn't really there, but certainly 20 carry in non-PPR formats. I understand. I totally more understand the Ken Walker above a Kyron above an A-Chain, but PPR formats, the receiving upside, Ken Walker, it's just clearly below those two. But speaking of Cup, traded him for DJ Moore. Is that a bad idea? No, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I don't think it's a bad idea at all trading away Cup for DJ Moore. I think if anything, trading away Cup right now is a phenomenal time to do so. Capturing on the 21 targets, 14 catches. Obviously, you lose the wide receiver 1 in Puka there in the middle of that game. And you go back to the guy who, well, in his prime, going back a couple years, was unbelievable in fantasy. The connection, long-standing now with Matthew Stafford. Cup, people are only going to assume similar degrees of production, which I don't know if it's that fair to assume that number 2 overall fantasy production, 30 plus odd points. I don't think it's that fair to assume that for the foreseeable future, the next 4 weeks or so, but capturing on it now, trading him for DJ Moore, who, look, he is wide receiver 1 there, and with Rome Odunze, look, going down, dealing with injuries in his own right, and Keenan Allen as well. I mean, look, DJ Moore is certainly going to have the opportunity. He's certainly pulling up. Let's pull up the Bears-Titans game in particular. DJ Moore actually gets out-targeted by Keenan Allen, 8-11. But the explosiveness certainly there compared to a Keenan Allen. DJ Moore gets the long-term extension, connected with what I believe truly, wholeheartedly is going to be an elite NFL quarterback, Caleb Williams. Just wasn't quite week 1. I think it's a good process to trade Cup for DJ Moore. And if you're even able to get on the flip side, get a pick on top, just capturing in on this lightning in a bottle, week 1 overreaction with Cup, I'm all for that. Yep. More Cup. The production this year, well, the production through week 1, obviously, it's heavily toward Cup. But this is Dynasty. And I think that's a extremely sound move to make. Extremely sound. Okay, let's go back to framing the RB discussion. So we talked about Ken Walker, Etienne, Pacheco, James Cook. Etienne, Pacheco, James Cook. I've never been an incredibly high. I honestly, frankly, I don't even have a single share of Travis Etienne in Dynasty. I don't. Is it maybe some below the surface anti-Clemson bias? Possibly. But I just look at the volatility. Sure, Etienne had a really strong pre-bye performance for multiple weeks, but then it just completely tailed off. The Jags, I mean, look how they find a way to, and I love Doug Peterson. I'm an Eagles guy. Love what he did for us. They find a way to lose that game. Just not good for the Jags. He ends up getting Travis Etienne, that is. He ends up getting matched in carries by Tank Bigsby. Matched in carries. Tank Bigsby, 12 for 73 versus 12 for 44. Etienne does get the touchdown, right? And he does, of course, get targeted 3 times, which is his relative floor, I think. gets a couple catches for 15 yards, but the fumble, and I think, look, Doug Peterson, leadership as a coach, he instills, look, talk to ETN, what I seen in a recent press conference today or yesterday, this week, whatever, after the game in the immediate aftermath. You want to instill confidence in ETN. The coach speak, he's like, look, we're going to continue to get you involved, but I just don't love having Travis Etienne as a dynasty manager. I don't love it. Don't love it. The Jags in that division, even just how things might trend and how, look, we're going to associate players with teams. That's just how it works. They might be at the bottom of the AFC South. I know the Titans looked bad. They completely botched in their own right, but the Jags, I just don't see things trending all that well for Travis Etienne. So if he can sell for RB10 price, I'd be interested. I would be interested. What do you think of Penix? 64th ranked player in Superflex, too high. Getting him at cheaper cost startups. Feel like getting great value if he 9 rookie rankings after Bowers and McCarthy. I respect the 109 ranking of Penix in terms of Superflex rookie drafts as it was. I mean, he's gonna get an opportunity at some point. I'm not expecting this year, but there's a possibility. There's very well a possibility if things continue to trend in the way they have with, which I'm not saying it will. I don't think it will, with struggles against, frankly, a really good defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers. If that's more or less the same, Penix does make a start at some point this season. I think he just does. And I think similar to, the team they just played in the Steelers, I think at some point Kirk Cousins picks up an injury or even a phantom injury, if you want to call it, where it's just out of extra precaution. The contract that they gave him. Let me fix this. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Exact window size there. What did I say? Get back. The door is certainly open for Penix to make a start this year. And I think Penix, look, with those weapons in Atlanta, valuing him as a 109 Superflex formats, I think that's reasonable. 9th player in the class. 64th overall player in Dynasty. So we're basically talking end of the 5th round, into the 6th round. It's quite aggressive, but if you have a conviction in the player, and I have some belief in him as well. I mean, you acknowledge it yourself. You're able to get him much later than that. I think in terms of the true talent ranking, 64th, using a Madden ranking, the true talent, where you drafted the red. Speaking of red, up, down, stock up, stock down. Excuse me, a little bit of a tangent there. Yeah, Penix. I think it's fair where at valuing him highly overall in Dynasty and his future compared to what his lack of involvement now or seemingly for the immediate. But it is Dynasty at the end of the day, and the situation is nice, and there might not be all this long of a leash for Kirk Cousins. I've been mentioning, look, the contract itself after this year, especially after next year, it's totally wide open for Michael Penix. What has he shown? A guy that certainly responds to adversity, certainly can adjust to different schemes, to new environments. Look, Penix, what's really there not to love other than situation, which is just for the situation for the immediate, which is baked in expectations, low, setting the bar relatively low, which speaks to where he's being drafted, I feel like, in startups. So Pacheco and James Cook. Interesting. It was interesting hearing of Chiefs running back situation or rumors of them being interested in Josh Jacobs and this, that, the other. They end up getting P. Ryan. Pacheco gets 15 carries. He gets 15 carries for you. Average of 3 flat. adds a touchdown. I mean, look, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy this year. I think where he's valued as a low-end RB1, just outside the top 10, I think it's fair. I think it's fair for Pacheco. I think it's a little bit right at his ceiling. I mean, so if you want to sell, power to you. I think it's a safer running back to have. I mean, you're going to have you a couple that 3 target floor, I think. But what's the offense? It's Mahomes to Kelsey to Rashee Rice to Xavier Worthy now. Noah Gray even getting some involvement there. So he's not a primary pass catcher. That is as in Isaiah Pacheco. He does though. Let's develop some context. Excuse me. Just looking at how the exact snap distribution was for the Chiefs. He plays 80% of the snaps. 80% of the snaps. That's pretty promising. It's not as crazy as some of the other running backs we've looked at already. Is approaching 90+%. But 80%, that's pretty promising. That's pretty promising for Isaiah Pacheco. And moving forward, I think it goes down a bit in the aggregate. We're looking probably at around 65% of the snaps if I had to venture out there and guess. Just in terms of as we get into the year, force teams like the Chiefs especially, you kind of want to load manage or you kind of want to be careful with how the degree to which you use a player. I think that's certainly in the minds of coaches, decision makers. But Pacheco, he is what he is. A low-end RB1 in Dynasty. So I don't think it's a bad time to buy or sell. But being trade away, the focus of this discussion. Sure. You want to trade to Isaiah Pacheco, go ahead. Bigsby battle last year came out of nowhere. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. I mean, look, there were high expectations for Tank Bigsby. I think he was thought of highly in that running back class, and it's just fickle sometimes how Dynasty works out. Is Tank Bigsby the new Kyren Williams? That's a crazy headline. But just speaking to the idea that second-year breakouts for running backs, it's a thing. It's a thing, but 12 carries, potential 10-plus carries. Look, as much as I just said, Doug Peterson, look, you want to make the outward clear. You want to get ETN involved continually. We're not just going to abandon ETN, your RB1. But Bigsby certainly poses a problem. He certainly poses a problem as much as any running back RB2 does effectively in this top. That's why, I don't really love, largely speaks to why I don't love ETN. In terms of the RB2, the threats in that backfield, or at least how it looks. Is it a fluke? We'll see. But don't think it is. I think they're stylistically different. I think certainly there's going to be a case for a Tank Bigsby, a role for sure. Carving out himself. Side bet, whoever high record wins. Okay. James Cook. Okay, James Cook. Rounding out the RB discussion. James Cook here gets vultured by Josh Allen a little bit with the rushing touchdowns. That is what it is. You're just gonna face that with Josh Allen. You just are. QB1 overall in fantasy 2024 and beyond, and Dynasty, of course, he is for me. I'm adamant about that. Let's take a look at refresher. What happened in this Cardinals-Bills game? 19 carries for James Cook. 19 carries. Almost right there at 20. He gets 3 targets. So a solid, an all right game for James Cook. It could have been even better if he just had the 1 touchdown. I really do like James Cook quite a bit. I think, why sell him as RB12? when I see the upside to frankly crack above a Pacheco, above an Etienne, even a Ken Walker, to be honest, into the top nine, RB9 potential. I really do see that with James Cook. I do. So, all right, rounding out that rounds out RB. I got a chat rule saying, just asking about teams, comparing teams. Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, Ken Walker, CMC, and Ken Walker. Okay, so those are our top 2 quarterbacks, top 2 running backs, Chase, Waddle, Olave, top 3 receivers, Pitts, tight end, Devontae Smith, DJ Moore. Okay, so I mean that's certainly a loaded team. Certainly a loaded team. Don't see how it's an easy team to beat. That's for sure. Don't see how that's an easy team to beat. Would have to be, yeah, given all the talent there. Rounding out, last but not least, the tight end position. Should you trade certain players at the tight end position, tight end ones? Sam Laporta connecting back. Sam Laporta connecting back to the Lions conversation. Who's a bit of an odd man out. Look, it's year 2. It's not his rookie year. Teams know how good he is, but it wasn't like he just became good at the end of last year. It wasn't like he just became good all of a sudden at the end of last year. He continues to be really the guy in the red zone. That is Sam Laporta. You're going to continually target him. It was a little bit of an off game. Sam Laporta, I mean, he's tight end 1 in Dynasty for a reason, and I don't think that's really going to change all that soon whatsoever. Just don't see it. So it's now a time to sell. Look, if he's already tight end 1, you talk about if some players at their ceiling. I don't think you're going to be able to sell him for quite as much as you should be able to, given what we just saw, given how people want to react to it, be so reactionary. So I'm not looking to sell Sam Laporta. Trey McBride at tight end 2. Look, led the Cardinals in targets. We already know that. He looks to potentially continue to do that. Marv was thought to be the guy, but looks like Trey McBride could very well be the guy. He's a guy, Trey McBride, if I have him, look, I'm not really looking to sell him. Tight end 2, if I can get multiple high-end first-round picks, absolutely. Sure, I'm looking to trade him. That is Trey McBride, but otherwise, why not have a guy who I think in the aggregate, right? It's easy to say after week 1, oh my God, the tight end, the hero tight end strategy, did not really work all that well. Week 1, potentially, but I have some faith Trey McBride to be one of the guys that absolutely delivers for you in a meaningful way in 2024. Brock Bowers, not really looking to sell him. I know the Raiders not a fashionable team, I guess, given the loss to the Chargers, given some struggles. But Brock Bowers, if we pull Brock Bowers, leads the Broncos. Not what am I saying? The Broncos. I'm loopy. All right. Brock Bowers leads the Raiders. Yes, he does in targets with 8. I think that's going to be not few and far between. Devontae Adams. I think they're going to be really the co-leaders in targets. I think Alexander Madison just with specifically to the Raiders. I don't think Alexander Madison retains this type of role in the passing game. I think Brock Bowers does, though. I think Brock Bowers, 6 catches for 58 yards. I think there's going to be absolutely some touchdown upside that accrues, that builds, just because he barely broke double digits week 1. I'm not looking to sell. Really not looking to sell Brock Bowers. I've been clear. If anybody's not going to give up their rookie number 1 positional out of this recent class, if somebody's not giving up their number one overall positional designation, it's Brock Bowers at tight end. It's Brock Bowers at tight end. I am not looking to trade Brock Bowers. I am not. Not. Well, going back to segue a little bit. Mahomes, Burrow, pretty good quarterbacks. Pacheco, Kamara, solid running backs. Diggs, Higgins, Reed, Kittle, Worthy, Keenan Allen, bench likely. Mahomes and Burrow had me in the first half, had me certainly a preference in terms of the quarterbacks, but the rest of which don't really love it. Don't love it compared to your running backs of CMC, headlining Chase, Waddle, headlining receivers, DJ Moore. Certainly, I think you got the better team. Oh, he also has Purdy. Well, you can only start two, so I think you certainly have the edge there. Dalton Kincaid, week 1. There's certainly clips going out there. What happens with the Bills, specifically with the opponent they play in the Cardinals? Kincaid really has nowhere to go a lot of the times because of the attention that he draws. I think we're only going to see, though, given the clear focus on developing a run game with James Cook, just recently mentioned, and Josh Allen, of course, Dalton Kincaid's only going to work himself back into prominence. He's clearly running amongst the highest routes frequency in that offense. So the opportunities, he's going to be on the field. Just did not work out really at all week 1 for him. But the last thing I want to do is to panic sell on a Dalton Kincaid after this type of performance. Just not looking to trade Dalton Kincaid. Kyle Pitts. So it's an interesting, different story with Kyle Pitts. Look, we've seen it's been a long running debate. Kyle Pitts, a long time subject of topic of focus. But he catches a touchdown week 1 in this new era of the Falcons. Catches a touchdown, the lone passing touchdown from Kirk Cousins in this game. He ends up getting targeted only 3 times, though. Only 3 times. Kyle Pitts, I think, given this week 1 performance, there's not really as firm of a hype, of a belief. But then again, we see the body of work. But at a certain point in time, it begs the question, do you just cut a loss compared to if you drafted him all the way back when he entered, spent whatever rookie pick or startup pick? Kyle Pitts, it's such an interesting player. The Falcons did not look good from a passing perspective. Then again, Kirk Cousins did not have that much time. Kyle Pitts, I am not really looking to trade. To abandon, to jump ship here after an okay, but not all that inspiring week 1. I think the Falcons do get better. I think Kyle Pitts, Drake London in particular, are going to work their way into the it's crazy to say, the Ray McLeod roles, at least in terms of the 7 target range, more frequently for your Kyle Pitts and Drake Londons of the world. The clear receiver hierarchy of the Falcons will be what we think it is sooner rather than later. Not Ray McLeod at number 1. Not trading Kyle Pitts right now. Not looking to trade Kyle Pitts. Going down the board here. Oh my God. Isaiah Likely. I honestly, okay. Did not think it was likely he would be here. I guess pun intended here. Isaiah Likely at tight end 6. I think this is a bit of an overreaction. Not a bit. I think this is a lot of an overreaction. I thought being in, the tight end 10 conversation was where I expected a bit for Isaiah Likely. I did not anticipate tight end 6, fringe tight end 5, honestly. Isaiah Likely, if you can sell him at this type of price, if you can just straight up, if you can get TJ Hawkinson, please, if you're in striking distance, really to get a Kincaid, maybe even a Bowers. I mean, yeah. Of course, he was one whatever centimeter inch from getting another 7 points at the end of that game. Forces overtime, maybe even gets more. Clear tight end 1. I think let's go to the tight end distribution, please. I think that's important. He was the clear tight end 1, right? One of the top performers, top 5, top 10, I think, in all of fantasy week 1. But we led off the stream talking about really highlighting the quarterback position, but even the receiver position, even the running back position, I think it holds true. You cannot all of a sudden, at least to this degree, with this type of number 1 positional performance, expect it to be the norm for Isaiah Likely. I think in his specific case, he was the beneficiary of the Chiefs extremely, extremely keying in on Mark Andrews, to where there was really no real opportunities, all that at all, to frequently target Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely takes the cake here. He was 26, pretty much doubled every other tight end not named Foster Moreau, which again, that's a very interesting tight end too. Isaiah Likely, okay, yeah, he gets 12 targets. He catches 9 of them. Over 100, gets you the touchdown. I just do not think it is likely at all for him to repeat this degree of performance, for him to be all of a sudden this fringe top 5 tight end in Dynasty. I just don't get it. Don't get it. Talking about it in the chat. So a first for Isaiah Likely. It's an interesting debate. I think if it's a late first, somebody has Mark Andrews. All right. I think we're not talking crazy worlds or golfs, but any mid, any non-playoff first, that's just crazy territory for me with Isaiah Likely in terms of how to value him. Let's just for an exercise. Let's look at 2023 regular season. Let's look at tight end performances. Who was tight end 1? Who was tight end 1 last year after week 1 for 2023, a year ago? It was Hunter Henry. You had Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst, Donald Parham, composing 3 of the top 4. I mean, if anybody seems likely to be, his last name is Likely, so you're just going to be saying Likely a lot, okay? Anybody's likely to be in or at the top after week 1, but then, okay, let's go 2023 regular season. To then not even be found in the top 12 in tight end 1 territory per game, it's Isaiah Likely. I mean, come on. You look at a guy like a Blake Bell after week 1, Adam Troutman, Harrison Bryant's. But again, stressing at the top, it just doesn't make sense to value Isaiah Likely this high. I'm sorry. It was a unique set of circumstances that he was primarily the beneficiary of. And it's not that he doesn't have talent, it's the presence of Mark Andrews that he didn't all of a sudden, he's not just disappearing for good. And he's not all of a sudden going to be this player that is the consistent number 1 target getter on the Ravens. It's just not going to be the case. Mark my words, clip it. Maybe I come back to eat these words, but I do not see it. Do not see that being the case. That is Isaiah Likely dominating all of a sudden, being the go-to time in, time out for Lamar Jackson. getting 12 targets. I mean, yeah, just do not see it. I don't see it. I do not see it. So, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely okay with selling Isaiah like Dynasty. Hawkinson, look, love him if you can buy him for cheap while you can. I mean, throw in a couple of seconds, all for that, to be honest. Speaking of likely traded, JMO and a third for Mark Andrews. I think that's fine for Mark Andrews. I think that's fine. Yeah, I think likely hierarchy. I think Zay Flowers ultimately is the target getter for the Ravens. I mean, how much for a number one target getter? Target getter. I think. Look, Derrick Henry, the run game, going to be one of the best in the NFL. I think in the aggregate, 2024 is all said and done. So it's not going to be a sheer crazy stick count number of targets of number one on a team for Zay Flowers, but I think Mark Andrews is not all that far behind at all. And look, we play in a tight end premium world, so it still gets at Mark Andrews' value. And then Isaiah Isaiah Likely, and then Isaiah Likely figures into it as the third highest target getter. So I think that's a fair read on it. That's where I tend to lean. More than lean, I guess. Tend to be very convicted in. All right. Kelce. Not looking to sell him after week one. A relatively subpar week one compared to expectations. He signs an extension. So I think the fears of, oh my gosh, oh no, he's gone anytime. This risk of retirement. Well, he signs the contract. Is it possible he retires after this year? Sure, but the contract extension, I think, puts that very much in doubt. I think there's still a couple more years of Travis Kelce to be, frankly, tight end one any given week amongst the favorites to be tight end one overall. Travis Kelce. Let's get a refresher, actually. Let's get a refresher for. Okay, he didn't play. Let's go to week 2. Let's go to regular season week 2 for Travis Kelce. More back to normal for Travis Kelce, so gets 12.6 in a week 2 compared to last year. At this time, to be week 2 of last year, to be clear. I think we're going to see a bounce back for Travis Kelce very soon. Very, very soon. I think it's Travis Kelce. It's Rashee Rice. They're the primary target getters. Four targets for Travis Kelce. That's crazy. That is just not going to be the case. That's not going to be the case. We know how much of a weapon he is. The chemistry he has with Pat Mahomes. I'm not looking to sell Travis Kelce. Especially, look, if you have Travis Kelce, what are the chances that you're a contender? Pretty high, or at least what is your strategy? And barring significant injuries that you're having to manage, and basically throwing in the white towel already, if you basically had all the guys that are now on injured reserve or candidates to be Travis Kelce, I mean, come on, don't all of a sudden trade him now. Mark Andrews pretty much touched on him to a very large degree with Isaiah Likely discourse. Not going to trade Mark Andrews because tight end 9, I don't even know if people are really going to give me tight end 9 prices given the overreaction of Isaiah Likely's role and what we saw week 1. So, I mean, not going to trade Mark Andrews. Not trade Mark Andrews. George Kittle, I mean, he is the volatility, especially toward the end of the year, of potentially either wins you a week in the playoffs or lets you down a bit. But given he's that clear tight end 1 in a really good offense, connected with Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, I'd look to trade George Kittle if I can get a nice pick on top of an Evan Ingram, a Pat Freiermuth, a Dallas Goedert. That's the case I'm looking to trade George Kittle. Otherwise, he's in this kind of tier of, outside of the first 2 tiers or so, where he's really a guy that I'm cool trotting in there week in, week out. I know there's a decent wide range of outcomes, but if anything, look, with no CMC potentially next week, I mean, George Kittle can very well have a big week or two in this early part of the season, and then who knows? Everything and anywhere in between. The 49ers, we know they're going to be a good team. So George Kittle is tight end 10. Trade him. I'm looking to trade down potentially for a good price, for a bonus pick on top. Okay, rounding out the tight end 1 conversation. Jake Ferguson, rounding out this stream. Jake Ferguson, man, of course the guy, it's like my curse. It's like the curse of the psych curse of my tight end breakout for the year is Jake Ferguson. He gets a pretty notable injury week 1. Why would you trade him now when people are clearly going to expect it's a tale as old as time in Dynasty, which you should not employ the redraft style because of the fact that it's, of course, not just this year. There's no sense in selling at an injury discount for players. There just is not, at least for these players that are in or entering their prime. They're not these quarterbacks on the brink of retirement. Come on. I'm not looking to trade. Oh my God. What is going on here? Jesus, Mary. Not looking to trade Jake Ferguson in Dynasty. I'm just not. Evan Ingram, rounding out, let's look at the box score. Again, I want to refresh myself. Just throw the numbers up there. What happened in this Jags game? Evan Ingram only gets targeted 4 times. Only catches the ball once. Converting those. Evan Ingram, look, you bring in Brian Thomas. Gabe Davis is another new face in that passing attack. But Evan Ingram, look, as a tight end, he has the receiver skill set. He really does. He does. So a low-end tight end 1 is where he should be valued. It's where he should be. Not looking to trade him. He's in this tier. It's like regardless of what could happen week 1, especially if he went out and produced the Isaiah Likely performance and was the clear tight end 1 overall. Absolutely driving home the message of trading an Evan Ingram. But especially after a performance where it's very subpar, very paltry compared to what we've seen of him the last several years. He's going to be, I only see it relatively up from here. I mean, those 4 targets, if you convert those 4 targets, you're talking about a very different stat line, a very different complexion. But 4 being honestly a floor. I mean, you look at just the distribution, 3, 4, 4, 3, 4. That's rare, I feel like. That's going to be rare to have that equal of a target distribution. I think Brian Thomas is going to get his. And I think Evan Ingram is going to get his. He's too much of a unique receiving skill set. A nice low end, if you don't have the top guys at the position, he's right there. A sensible guy to have in your tight end spot. Don't trade Evan Ingram. Don't trade, the majority of guys talked about in this stream, guys, that we've covered, because it's just week 1. It's just week 1. And you only look to capture. I'm only looking to sell in the event of seemingly anomalous production, which is the case for not that many in week 1. There's been so much change over the last 6, 7, 8 months across every organization. You're ramping up. You're ramping things back into normalcy. Meaningful football games when everything counts. There's so much that has to go in to preparing for return for action in the NFL. A lot of guys are disappointed. A lot did. But don't all of a sudden, in a dynasty fantasy football context, react such that in a way you got to just pivot, sell at a discount for any given player, for any of these high-end number one at their positions. You just can't, you cannot panic. Cannot panic. Now is not the time to do so. Gibbs for Monty and a 25 first. Sober, if it's a early first, we're talking. We're talking if it's an early first. Dobbins rose to 123. Player too high. 123rd player. I mean, you're talking 10th round. 10th round. I mean, that's not crazy territory. It's not crazy territory for Dobbins. It's right at around, I think, the ceiling. It's fine. 123rd. I mean, as the 123rd player, I mean, come on. It's like once we get out of the first couple rounds, it's really to each their own. Your individual preferences, your convictions in certain players, opportunities. J.K. Dobbins looking like the beneficiary of, well, speaking of time, change, actual recovery, which is great to see for J.K. Dobbins. The guy that was seemingly promised to be the darling in that Ravens rushing attack after that rookie year, and we just didn't see it, but now we're seeing it. So J.K. Dobbins, it's really nice. It would be nice to see him in that comeback player of the year conversation. That would be pretty cool. I think him and that Chargers offense, Justin Herbert in particular, as to really going back an hour or so, I like what that team's going to do. I like the trajectory. So bumping up J.K. Dobbins in dynasty rankings, of course, that's really what we have to do, given what we've just seen. I don't think it's a extreme overreaction, especially when we're talking 10th round, still mid-round startup pick. So not too high, I don't think. So that rounds out, guys. Questions, throw them down in the comments. If you like this type of video, drop a like. If I'm make it likely for me to go again. I can't. It's later at night. I'm a horrible. Guys, enough of my rambling. I will see you tomorrow. We're doing South Carolina stream. We're doing, of course, Dynasty content, Dynasty streams, Q&As, as always. Guys, I will see you tomorrow. Have a great one.